pretty
Oh,
interesting.
yeah. I don't always ask, but sometimes when I'm just standing here, I don't want to go, oh, hey, hold on a second.
No, I like that. That's good. That's good. People appreciate that.
But I will ask normally in a situation like this. So, Dylan, right?
Yes.
When you take Christianity seriously,
Mm-hmm.
we have an obligation to look at who our religion is built on.
Mm-hmm.
And our religion is built on the second person of the Godhead, Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And he had hard things to say to people, and he said them when they needed to be said, but he never said them devoid of love. So even when he would tell people that there was condemnation waiting for them, he wasn't doing it simply to preach condemnation to them. He was
Right.
doing it to warn them. And so when you go to John chapter 3, everybody's familiar, even agnostics are familiar with
John
3:16.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
3:16. I looked up John 3:3 last night because a buddy of mine had a shirt like that. I used to be super religious and I still read the Bible today. And so, like last night, we were talking about Levite and the concubine, and
Obscure.
the Old
You like to go to the obscure.
Well,
and I don't
not-
mean that the Old Testament's not obscure. I don't mean it that way, but
it's not applicable to us, and I tell people that too. It's the Old Testament's the Book of Moses, written for the Israelites, and after Jesus was crucified, died, and was buried, kind of voided those old laws and put in kind of this new.
yeah, I would agree with part of that. What I would say is that Christianity, there again, if you're taking the religion seriously,
Right.
you have to look at what the Old Testament was about, and everything in the Old Testament was actually pointing
Towards the
to
New Testament.
Christ.
Right. Hey.
And so you have, I mean, there's a reason why we have terminology like crossroads and cross points
Yeah.
and
I
stuff.
went to a Crossroads youth group.
So not even just for youth groups, but if you look around, we have crossroads, we have these, we have things that we talk like that because Christianity is built on this crossroad where the Old Testament and the New Testament meet, because everything in the Old Testament was pointing to Christ and everything in the New Testament is pointing to Christ. And so what we have in the Christian worldview and Christian philosophy is we have everything pointing at Jesus. And so the Old Testament is beautiful for Christians if they're willing to read it and see it and understand it for the way it is and not try and make it all about them. And the biggest
Right.
problem with Christianity today, with a lot of people, not everyone in Christianity, I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but
Right.
with a lot of people, is that they try to read themselves into everything. So when you think about the story of David and Goliath,
Yeah, and Kings, my favorite.
everybody's like, oh, I'm going to go out and face my giants today, and I'm like, no, you don't get to do that, or I'm Samson, and these are, and I'm going to push down the pillars of resistance in my life, and I'm like, no, that's not about you. There's something else going on there, and it's not about you at all. And so while I appreciate what you're saying about the Old Testament, it's not devoid, because one of the things that Jesus said when he was asked what the greatest of the commandments is, the Pharisees, the religious elite of the day, came to him and said, Rabbi, they were trying to flatter him,
Right.
If you call somebody rabbi back then, you're
That was
real,
high.
yeah, that was a high
That's
honor. And well, he's God, so he kind of knew what they were doing.
Right.
And he said to him, they asked him, what's the greatest commandment? And he just stops and looks at him and says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. And the second greatest commandment is love your neighbor as yourself. In those are all the law and the prophets. In other words, everything that the prophets said and everything that the books of the law said were summed up in love God, love neighbor. And so we can look, so how do I define what it means to love my neighbor?
Matthew
I don't
7.
steal from him.
I look at
I don't-
Matthew 7.
Yeah, Matthew 7's a wonderful, and that's what Jesus does. Don't covet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, by the way, don't commit adultery, but don't just physically commit adultery
Don't
or
do
not
it in
commit
your
adultery.
mind.
Don't do it in your mind. And then he goes on and says, but you've already done that, so you're guilty.
Right.
And that's the amazing thing, and that's what was missing here last week on Tuesday with a guy that was here.
Yeah.
He flat out told people, I'm not here to preach the gospel, I'm here to judge.
Right.
I'm here to preach condemnation. And I don't have to preach condemnation. I can warn people about condemnation, but I don't have to preach to them that they are condemned.
They'll figure it out themselves.
Well, they're going to have one or two responses. I write quite a bit for my website. I'd love to have you look me up and interact.
I was hoping that you'd pull something out. Yeah, right. Good sales pitch.
I'd love to. I actually love atheists. They're my favorite people.
They can be fun people. They can be not so fun either. So I mean,
the atheists have the same group of people that street preachers have. There's a group of atheists that you just don't want to interact with, and there's street preachers you just don't want to interact with.
I've been involved with the atheist organization on campus here, and so I've seen the spectrum of, you got really hard-headed atheists who just make the whole image look bad.
Oh.
And you got people who just, don't really give a damn too much about the whole, being a keyboard warrior in a sense,
Oh, yeah.
Being so flaming and argumentative and all that. Like, I've exhausted my energy doing that back in the day. Now it's just reading philosophy and having discussions with people. Once it goes south, I'm like, all right.
Yeah, there's no need for me to throw fuel on the fire or something's gonna. But I love having civil interactions with people, and and that's I write extensively. Well, maybe not as extensively as some. I about 1 or 2 articles a week on my website, but I have a full-time. Right. Shame on you.
Yeah.
I have a full-time job too, so it's. Yeah. But there's one of the things that I want people to understand is that, look, Christianity is not a set of rules.
It's a relationship.
Well, it's a relation. It is a religion. I don't have any problem.
No,
James. I don't have a problem saying it's a religion.
Mm-hmm.
James, and when he wrote his epistle to the church, when he wrote his letter to the church, he said, "Here is good and pure religion," and he says, help the poor and the orphans, the widows and the orphans and the poor. Now that's a summation.
Mm-hmm.
And does that mean, well, you're obviously a good Christian if you're spending all your time helping widows and poor people and the orphans? Well, not necessarily, because there's a lot of people that do things like that just to make themselves. And there again, you look at Matthew 7. Many of you are going to come to me on that day and you're going to say, Lord, Lord, didn't we do all these wonderful things in your name? And I'm going to say, get away from me, I never knew you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a problem with the relationship aspect. I don't have a problem with the religion aspect. What I have a problem with is the abuse that, on both sides. Because there are people, the guy that was here, last week, and then there are people who also at the same time they would never dream of coming out here in any capacity because they're so busy doing all the religious stuff. And that's what they're doing, all their religious things. They have no idea who Christ really is. They have no idea. They don't really understand that they needed a savior. They were just raised going to church.
Yeah.
And so their relationship is devoid, or their religion is devoid of relationship. And there are people who claim to have relationship and it's completely devoid of religion. And there has to be a meeting of the two in Christianity. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Right. It's like trying to sync your phone up with your computer and having a Android phone and an Apple computer and not understanding why they're not communicating with each other.
Right.
And that's a horrible analogy.
But hey,
it works. And it's just you have to have both the aspects. You have to have the relation aspect of Christianity along with the religion aspect, because the religion informs our understanding of what the relationship is supposed to be, and a lot of people are missing that. And it's and my friends that were out here with me earlier, they had to take off, but and what I've said hundreds and hundreds of times in situations like this, Dylan, is that every other, and as a philosophy major, you'll maybe would recognize this, every other religion in the world, and this is what sets Christianity apart from almost every other religion. Well, not almost every religion. Every other religion in the world, no matter what spectrum or perspective it comes from, says do. you must do this, you must do this. Over and over and over again, it's always do. And then hope that in your doing, you've done enough to please whatever the deity is over your religion, or what the force is over your religion, because there are religions out there that aren't focused specifically on a deity, they're focused on a practice or whatever. And so your hope is that you've done enough in the eyes of that particular religious perspective, that you now have earned the pleasure of that higher power, of that deity. And then if that deity's in a good mood on the day you die, you might get a blessing or a reward. Christianity says you can't. Christianity says you can't keep God's standard. And people think that sounds so bad, but it's the most beautiful news in the world, because that's what we do as humans. I mean, especially in the United States. Rugged individualism, right? Everybody's their own person. I'm going to pull my... Everybody wants to take credit for everything that they have. And so we apply that to Christianity, and we say we want to take credit. And God says, no, you can't take credit. If you think that you're going to be good enough to enter into my presence, I'm going to point to you and say everything you've ever done all your life, even those good things you've done, they're all sin because you were doing them to make yourself look good.
And that goes on to 7 with the hypocrites who go out into the streets. So it's all good stuff. I appreciate it. I'm going to head out.
Yeah, you probably have a class to get to. So.
Well, I'm skipping them. I'm getting a little bit too sick. Don't tell anybody. But
you're getting too sick?
Yeah, it's cold.
Yeah, I'm getting over a cold, so. You're not contagious, are you?
I don't think so.
All right. So no, I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah,
so
of course,
look me up. Have a good day. Thanks for stopping.